Well, hello there, and welcome back to War Thunder. I'm Corny Swiss, and today this replay is courtesy of Many Miles Away in his M103, decorated beautifully with the American flag, of course, because this thing does kind of have the cannon of freedom. It's a really, really powerful gun. But in this replay, it's a realistic battle, and I believe the team lists are Americans and Germans versus Russians. And that's not uncommon. And you see a friendly, it looks like a Panzer IV pushing a mouse. I don't quite know the strategy there. I don't think it's going to work. But this is on Eastern Europe, obviously, and he is moving over into the north of the river across the fork to start engaging targets. And the first target of the day is this T-54, a very potent tank. T-54, to me, is kind of the jack-of-all-trades tank. It has good speed, it has good maneuverability, has a good gun, and armor's pretty good. So it's just a very, very all-around solid tank. And, you know, for a while I had a debate on whether, primarily with myself, whether the T-54 or the IS-4 I thought was the better tank. And I never really resolved that. I think the IS-4 is a very, very potent tank, and the T-54 is also a very, very potent tank, so it's difficult to say which one is, I guess, king of the roost. But ManyMilesAway is in a very difficult position here, because he wants to cross this bridge and move up with his team and get into a better flanking position, but this T-54 is blocking his way, and it's not obvious that the T-54 knows that his allied teammates are moving past him, so as far as he's aware, he just knows that there's an M103 in front of him. And this was a very good shot, right through the gun mantlet, right through the face of the tank, into the turret, knocked it out. Very, very good. So now we can proceed across the bridge, which is ultimately where we want to be. We don't want to sit, if you think of the bridge dividing the map into 3 sections, we don't want to sit in the northeastern section. It has, to me, it has very little strategic value. There are no cap circles there. There's no obvious ways to flank the opponent. There's no easy ways to get to. Basically, if you're in the 2 sections divided by the river running east-west, then you are in a position to affect the outcome of the game. If you're in the other sort of third over there, I feel like you don't really have that much of an impact because the city blocks your lines of fire, and there really isn't a lot you can do to affect like cap circles like we have here, which is ultimately the goal. You know, and the enemy teams seem to have pushed forward and taken 2 of the 3 cap circles, which is a problem because you're going to start bleeding tickets now, and that's not really what you want to have happen, obviously. But ManyMilesAway is moving forward to try and put pressure on the C cap, and he's in a pretty decent position to provide supporting fire and flanking fire into those tanks. By coming over here, he's on the other side of the river, which is a little awkward because you will eventually need to reset the cap, and to do that you need to move across the river, but that is an enemy IS-3. No idea he was there, and popped him, no problem. So that's a second kill. Now, you need to be aware of tanks to his right, where he's looking now, because generally that's where they're going to come from. That's the enemy's spawn and all that stuff. That's their original cap circle, B. So it's going to be important to secure this flank. And based on the team list, you can see that the American-German team is losing a lot of machines. They're down to, maybe 3 or 4 players. And the game isn't that old. But just scanning around, because this is a realistic mode. The target markers aren't above enemy tanks. I have them on in the replay just to make my life easier, and so that whoever watches this video can have a better idea of the battle as it unfolds. But I do think the M103. Wow, that was very quick. That was a very quick draw type of situation, and the enemy don't seem to realize he's here. He just popped a tank moving across that gap, and the T-44 continues to move across that gap, Now there is an IS-4 who's going to take residence on that corner, and that's going to be a very interesting engagement. But it's also going to a little trick you can use with the M103 to make your life maybe a little bit easier when it comes to using your armor, because the biggest issue the M103 has, in my opinion, is that the turret isn't great. You know, it's not bad, but there are guns in the game who can penetrate the cheeks of the turret and things like that, and it's generally a tank that you need to have the turret facing directly at the enemy. And even then, it's not a given. But ManyMilesAway is trying to move. I believe he wanted to cross the river here and try and flank those tanks he saw, but I think he's come to realize that there is in fact no bridge conveniently here. So he's going to have to turn around and push forward towards the other bridge and try and come at them from the side there. However, oh, there he is. Side shot in the IS-4. Not sure what it did. It obviously didn't disable him because incoming. Bounced the shot though, so that's nice. But you saw what he was doing. He was waggling the turret. He was waving it back and forth. And by doing so, he's making those weak spots on this turret a moving target. And it's very difficult to hit. Especially more so in War Thunder. Ooh, free kill, why not? But now he's going to start waggling this turret. And doing it in sniper mode is actually a good idea, because when you're in sniper mode, you can very easily track how quickly you're waving the turret, because you don't want to just be spamming your mouse, because if you do that, it's not gonna move hardly at all, because the turret has a rotation speed, and if you move your mouse, you can move your mouse much faster than you can move the turret. Something that World of Tanks sometimes you won't see. But very nice shot into the IS-4, knocks him out. And now he's sitting on 5 kills. This is turning into a game, and it's going to need to be a game if he wants to win this. They're still down on tanks, and you know, something the M103 has that it's very thin on the sides. So if one of these T-44s or one of these T-54s gets a side shot on him, his game's probably over. Well, in this machine. This is realistic. You can spawn in others. But the M103 it's a very good tank, I think. It is certainly the strongest rank 5 American tank. I don't think there's really... You could say the M47, but the M47 isn't at 8.0 battle rating, and it does struggle a bit to get the ammunition choices, but the M103 out of the box is a very potent tank, and just has that knockdown punch that you want from a heavy tank, especially a heavy tank that needs to deal with very tough opponents. So it's definitely, if you're grinding your Americans, go for the M103 first. It's very easily the strongest tank. Oh, don't go in the water. Slow down. It's very easily the strongest tank you can unlock at this battle rating for the Americans. But what's happening in the game is the enemies still hold both cap circles, and the ticket counter on top isn't indicative of how many tickets there are, but it does indicate that ManyMilesAway's team is losing tickets. You know, that much we can be sure of. The ticket counter is very rarely completely accurate. But he needs to cross across? He needs to get across this bridge and get onto this side of the map, because there happens to be all the cap circles, and he needs to start capping. And he got pretty lucky here. Into the back of the turret, a ZSU-37 can penetrate and can knock out an M103. But he gets the turret spun around, and he keeps moving forward rather than trying to shoot. And he might not have actually been able to shoot, but he moves into cover. He gets tracked, which is a little unfortunate, and directly to his front. So if you spin his turret around where the front of his hull's facing, there's a T-95, which is currently being shot. Well, not yet, but it will be shot in the rear, and that's going to be an issue for the T-95. You know, but it comes back to something I said in the T-95 review, where shooting a T-95 in the ass is actually not the best way to knock them out. You will knock them out, but it's going to take longer. You know, it's going to take, probably 3 or 4 shots to knock him out, because the engine block protects the crew and all the critical components. So you have to make him run out of fire extinguishers first. So rolling up, shooting him once to disable his engine and then rolling up beside him and shooting him through the upper part of his side armors, they're really the best way to do it. But ManyMilesAway is done repairing. He can now move, and the T-95 is firing his machine gun at him, which I generally say don't fire machine guns at each other because it actually can cause damage, but in this case both of these machines will not be harmed by the 50 cal. I like the artwork on the Doom Turtle though. Looks nice. The eyeballs are cool. But the T-44 is dealt with, the T-95 is sitting in the cap circle, and I believe has also capped, which means that now the enemy team is losing tickets, and it's going to become their prerogative to try and win this game. Now, according to the team list, there are 3 tanks left on ManyMilesAway's team, himself, the T-95, and it looks like an M42 Duster. The enemy at the moment only has 2 tanks, and this was a fairly good comeback. There was a time when they were down 3 or 4 players against very potent tanks and have actually pulled it back to a position where they can very easily win. Now this is a T-54, which is going to be a little awkward, and he did get lucky that the T-54 didn't outright kill him right there. But now it needs to become, this guy is at the moment the last player on the enemy team. Now he most likely can spawn another machine, but knocking out a T-54 likely means he's going to have to go to like a T-44 or an IS-2 or something like that, because most people take their strongest tank out first. So if someone's driving an IS-4, their next, well, okay, let's say someone's driving an IS-3, for example, because this is a better example. Usually they're not going to whip out an IS-4 after that. Usually they'll drop back to like an IS-2 or a T-44 or something like that. You know, if they're driving a T-54, it's not entirely likely they'll pull out, you know, some other really potent tank. It's likely they're going to come out with like a T-44. And actually one of the other players has spawned in. Now I believe what happened with that shot, because the replay system doesn't tell us exactly, I think the horizontal drive of this T-54 is knocked out. Or it was knocked out previously, and that shell didn't do a lot of damage. But either way, he's dead. And that is going to be ManyMilesAway's 8th kill in this realistic battle. And this really was a good game, and I'm glad you sent it in. And I would encourage everyone to keep sending your replays and keep sending these great games to me. I'm going to start featuring more of my own games because, you know, as I'm getting into my routine, I'm finding time where I can play a little bit and try and get clips so that I can talk about some other things that I really want to cover. Also, someone made mention of ship reviews for World of Warships in a previous video, and I've decided I fully intend to start that process and start doing ship reviews and things like that. And I already have an idea of which one I want to do first. So if you're interested in that, that's on its way. If you're not, well, you know, I encourage you to check it out regardless to see if maybe it is something you're interested in. But regardless. And, oh, and on that note, actually, I also made the determination that when Armored Warfare does go into open whatever access, or for whatever they decide to do with it, I probably will have some type of content presence there. It's entirely likely I'll start doing tank reviews and things like that, and trying to do that, because I feel like doing World of Tanks is maybe not the best idea, simply because the World of Tanks tank review world there's already all that resources already out there. War Thunder there's less so. But anyway, I want to thank you guys for watching. I've been Corny Swiss, and I'll see you next time.